We know that Mercedes has the best deployment of energy, so they're going to have a lot of sustained and available power, which is going to help them down the straights. But we want to look at some other things. I don't know much about Mercedes aero, but from the get-go, when we look at Red Bull's aero, they have an even more aggressive um, anti-dive wishbone configuration on the front of their car, which is going to keep them stable going around corners so that the car won't lunge. They've also got very, very they have with the active arrow in the back. I think they did something, a blown out beam, a beam. Yeah, the beam wing. They're not going to go the route of Aston Martin with the complex anti squat. Anyway, the beam wing at the back is supposed to give them stability. And both of these things with the front geometry, when they do the active arrow in the front, that front geometry itself is going to maximize the deployment of arrow in the front. And this beam wing in the back is also going to work with the activated arrow that the drivers have in the back to give them even more downforce and stability around corners. And also on the straight, the beam wing on the straight is going to give them less drag. So we know that they've made those innovations. I don't know if other teams have. We'll just have to wait and see. And they have a zero pod approach, which I'm not sure you guys, some of you technical guys can get into that. But it seems like they're doing a lot of stuff interesting with their aerodynamics. I don't know what Mercedes has in play. I don't know what McLaren. McLaren focuses more on with their anti-dive and more on mechanical grip and traction. But once again, it looks like Red Bull has a plan for aero. On top of this, if all they are is like maybe 3% less power than Mercedes with deployment, then with this aero and with Verstappen, things could look good for them. The only problem they're having right now is overheating. Oh, and one more thing, they have better harvesting than just about anybody on the grid too, which is going to be important. So they may not be able to deploy as much energy as Mercedes, but they harvest very well, and they might have less clipping than other teams. What are your thoughts, Afolabi?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The car looks and works differently from what we know from the ground effect era. The new design is very skinny and is able to suck a lot of air towards the middle of the car rather than pushing it away. And the active innovation here is
What's
that
funny, man? What's funny? Go ahead, Afolabi. Go
the
ahead.
wings move automatically. They flatten out to go fast. That's the X mode. And they tip up in corners to grip the track. That's the Z mode. Now, the
Yeah.
Red Bull system balances the front and the back perfectly so that there's no porpoising and there's no wobbling. So I think they've got this really right. And one area that I feel Max Verstappen, okay. So now that the motor generator unit kinetic is what is crucial and critical, there's going to
Yeah.
be a lot of strict energy use, especially limits per lap, and the fuel has to be 100% sustainable. Verstappen is exceptional when it comes to throttle control and traction
Yeah.
management. So this kind of electrical system that is
Yeah.
supposed to deliver more power, somewhere around
Yeah.
1 kilowatts, is going to be there's going to be stronger electric deployment. This gives instant torque out of the corners. And Max's ability to apply power smoothly means that there will be less wheel spin and better exits out of the
Yeah.
corners. So
And
basically, I think
they've been developing the power unit and all of this with him in the sim giving feedback with his throttle. So it's actually been built away the way he uses the throttle. See what I'm saying? So they've actually been building this for a year. So this car is tailored perfectly for him. And now that they're their own engine manufacturers, they're going to have very good integration because they create their own engine and they're going to have integration with it. So I think the only issue right now that we have is with the overheating.
Uh, for me, the two sides of the story with Red Bull especially because it's a teamwork in the end, right? You need the driver, I need the car to be there as well. Last year, Max was just pulling miracles out of his ass in the first half of the season, and the second half of the season, the car was much more stable. The team understood more of it. They took more feedback from the driver to make it happen, and he was winning more consistently in the half of the season. This year, Red Bulls put all of their cards, all of their power, whatever the resources have, all for Verstappen, right? So he has that full support from the beginning. And as for the aero design, this is where it gets a bit of interesting to see. Is that at maximum you can't get more than 5% deficit from an engine side. You can't get more than 5% deficit on the engine side, because if you're off by 5%, you would actually trigger the Article 7.5 of the FIA engine regulation to give you immediate more aero time begins before homologation even begins. So the fact that it is below 5%, whatever advantage that Red Bull and Mercedes have, is that they can be made up by the aero efficiency. This is not the previous era of Red Bull, where after 2014, the Renault really dropped their ball when it came to the electrical side and engine side, and where Red Bull just had to compensate heavily on the air efficiency to even win a Grand Prix. But this is not the case anymore. Red Bull has not dropped the ball entirely on the engine side. It's actually very competitive, and the aero package looks very interesting, especially the zero pod concept. It's not a zero pod like how we know it from the Mercedes. It is a bit width, but I think it is more focused on the direct engine channeling, the how it's placed and how it's done. It reminds me of why Mercedes thought of that. The main reasoning was to give the floor as much as priority as they can and give the engine optimization as much as they can. Since ground effect doesn't exist much anymore for the current cars, they're focusing more on the engine integration. So if Red Bull can really manage Red Bull can manage the engine integration with the car, as well as optimize the cooling, because at the moment they're struggling with it. The engine is having a bit of its cooling up and down with the PU. The ICE part is fine. The electrical part has cooling as issues. Another part is Max. We don't have to worry about Max, do we? He's a monster of his own. He can deal with whatever the issue there is. But I think if Red Bull can make a consistent car, you cannot count Max out of the championship. You just can't. You can't. When it comes to constructors, that's a whole other ball game. I don't know about the constructors.
A bit more about Red Bull's fronts, their what you call it, the anti-dive they have in the front, because now in this new era they're not going to be relying on front wings and a lot of the pointiness that was in the last generation of cars, where they were very low to the ground and deriving downforce without drag. So now they have to manipulate their the front and the back of the car to get around issues of downforce without drag. And as we've seen, they have the beam wing in the back, the blown out beam wing, which helps for stability. And in the front, they have the geometry. So it seems that they were looking at that with McLaren, and they might have even outdone McLaren with that. What do you think of Falabi?
Yeah, you have a smaller, lighter car with lower downforce, reduced size and weight, less reliant on ground effect, and a shift towards mechanical grip and driver input. Now, how Max can exploit this? These cars put more emphasis on raw driving skill. So Verstappen thrives in cars that move around and require a lot more commitment and natural feel. His late braking and sharp rotation on entry, especially ability to carry speed through corners, will give him some advantages in this kind of car, especially this season. And if you look at the fact that energy deployment strategy is very important this time around, electric energy per lap is limited, which means that drivers must choose when to attack or defend. Verstappen's, his race intelligence is elite. He times his moves perfectly, and basically he understands when to push and when to wait. Now, with energy management becoming a very important weapon, Max's ability to judge the exact lap to deploy power could decide races, especially when the battles are very close.
Yeah, they are.